Benchmark Business Sales and Valuations proudly presents the Meaning Business Podcast, hosted by Coudrey and Peter Spinda. This is the podcast for anyone serious about buying, selling, and preparing your business for maximum growth.
Welcome to Meaning Business, the podcast for Benchmark Business Sales and Valuations. Each month we talk about different things that are relevant to people who are looking to buy or sell a business. I'm Coudrey, the principal of Benchmark Business Sales and Valuations, and today I've got Peter Spinda and Andrew Morris with us.
Thanks, Bruce.
Hey Peter. Hello Andrew.
Hello, Bruce.
Peter, for joining us.
Andrew.
Did you want to kick off, Pete?
Absolutely. So, business broking. You've been in business broking for quite a few years. Benchmark been around since 1999. I guess the question is, where did the industry come from and where is it going? So today we'd like to discuss the evolution of business broking. And first question for you, Andrew, is how did you get involved in business broking?
Peter, I always answer this thing's great question. By default, I had a company that was a 14 mil turnover importation in the hospitality industry, and went to sell it when I realised that I'd lost interest. And unfortunately, I damaged the sale because I didn't know there was such a thing as a business broker, and tried to handle it myself. That cost me a lot of money and the opportunity of retiring. And then one of the contacts I had many years ago was a business broker, ex-Pizza Hut franchisee, and he said, why don't I become a business broker? And that was the start. So I worked with a couple of companies, and coming into my 11th year, and then finally met Bruce, and it all fell better into place.
Yeah.
And just for the benefit of the people that are listening and watching today, you're the president of the Australian Institute of Business Brokers.
I am.
Yeah. So you've been on the ARBB for a while, and so I think you're well placed to talk about what we want to talk about today, which is the future of business broking. You've been involved, you're the head of the institute, so you're in a good position to be able to talk about that.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting, I sat on the board for a couple of years and got an education into business broking and what the association does for a business broker. And then last year I took up the role as president, and it's been a fantastic ride. I'm not going to say I haven't had some challenges, and part of that is, business broking is a diverse group of people. Hasn't been terribly well managed over the years because it's very entrepreneurial, and we're now building the association to help support our business brokers throughout Australia, and a lot of that's built around education.
And a lot of people are unaware that it is a profession, and we need a professional association to grow the profession and to raise standards. And I think that's one of the things that the ARBB is doing right now.
Oh, absolutely. And I think because we haven't been a regulated industry and we fall under the REI.
What's the REI?
Real Estate Institute and so on. So, and it's a simple way out for legislation because the Office of Fair Trading works with the REI. We fall under their umbrella, and basically we don't have anywhere to really go. And a lot of these changes have been developed because of the CPD training that's being instrumented at the moment, which means everyone has to have their training, everyone gets judged, and but
that's good. That's standards.
The industry is being lifted up and elevated.
Absolutely. But it also means that as an association, I believe we felt behind because our bylaws and constitution most probably weren't up to speed. And also that meant that we have to bring in a standard for all our brokers to meet as well.
So Bruce, you've been in the industry for decades.
Long. I started when I was very young.
What's changed? What did the past look like?
Yeah.
And then maybe we could talk about where we're at today and where it's heading.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Because what I thought we should talk about is the past, the present, and the future. And I think if you're a buyer of a business or a seller of a business, to know where we're going and how this profession's evolving and how it adds value for both buyers and sellers is important. So when I started out in 1995, we used to advertise businesses in the paper. We had a full-page ad in the paper. The paper was huge. Every brokerage would have a full page. And we would struggle every week to make sure we had heaps of ads in the paper. And on Saturday morning, you'd get into the office and the phone would ring or the faxes would come through. And you'd get people to come into the office and you'd meet with them. And you would tell them about the business, but sometimes they'd even go have a look at it. And by Saturday afternoon, you'd be signing a business sale contract and getting a deposit in the trust account. And the difference there was that there was no due diligence or very little due diligence done. There was no confidentiality agreements for buyers to give the seller comfort. There was no obligation on the seller to warrant what they were providing to the buyer. And it was really a case of buyer beware. So it's changed enormously. And it wasn't a profession then. It was a sales job. And what I love is the fact that it's now a profession and there is due diligence and there is a process. And we have a thing called a sales process timeline that takes the buyer and the seller, once they've got an agreement, from the agreement stage to settlement stage. And we add value by making sure that all the issues are addressed, employee entitlements, stock, work in progress, all those things are addressed during that process to make sure that we get a complete settlement and that there's no grey areas and arguments and disputes later on. So we've got systems of protocols and processes that do provide confidentiality agreements, that do provide term sheets and all those sorts of things that are required to help the seller go ahead. But that's where we're at today. And, so since 95, we've gone from nothing to where we're at. But I honestly believe that we're just getting started. As a profession, there's a lot that's going to come down the track. And that's where it's exciting and interesting. And when it's not been a profession for young people, but I think it is now, because where the future is new guys with technology and all sorts of different sorts of businesses. When I started, and I'm sorry to digress here, but when I started out, the best businesses were news agencies and post offices. I can't. With email, how is a post office going to be a good business into the future? I'm not saying because of other reasons I think post offices will be good, but news agencies are definitely struggling. And the landscape has changed. What was a good business is no longer necessarily a good business. It was very hard in 1995 to sell an engineering business or a business that had technology. These days, that is the premium business. So it's really changing. It's exciting.
What's interesting as you're talking is that you say, back in 95, it was more like a sales profession, if I can put it that way, and with growing up as an industry. And what's interesting is that it's almost like as a broker, you've got to be a business advisor / entrepreneur / and you've got to understand all the different facets that make up a business and be able to go in there and really understand, okay, well, what does a P&L look like? What does it actually mean?
Yeah.
And guide the business owner and provide the advice so that they know how to exit the business the right way. Yep. And so that yourself as a broker that you're doing the best things from a legal point of view, the accounting point of view, the staff, all those different factors. There's a lot to learn as a business broker, a lot to do.
That's right, and that's why we need to have qualifications and the CPD that Andrew was talking about. If you don't have that, how could you possibly do that? And the way, I'll get Andrew to comment on this in a second, but I believe that the future is that we will be seen more as advisors. Our job is to get the best deal that we can for the client. But the advisory component is that we know that the buyer will have an accountant, a lawyer and a banker at least. The seller will have an accountant, a lawyer and a banker at least, and other advisors, potentially business coaches and other people. And we have to get all those parties together and make sure that we manage the process as the ringmaster in the circus does, coordinating everybody. That's really where our profession is heading, I think. What do you think?
No, totally agree, because, and I think, it's interesting as you talk, I think back just, say, 2 years, we never did share sales. Every broker I talked to, one of the most requested subjects at the up-and-coming conference with the AIBB is about share sales. And it's just that diversity, and even to touch on what you said as well, Pete, because we're watching the actual businesses that have been well established, expensive businesses, where accountants have set them up years and years ago, and their structure is such that they can't be sold, and so on. And now, there's one I'm looking at. They've been quoted by their accountant $1 million to restructure, and
Crazy.
yeah, which
Is the business worth $1 million?
it is, clearly. But I've taken it to another accountant who is talking, a couple $100,000. But our knowledge has gone from the associations, everything, the ringmaster, now into aspects of legals. Also, to the point that we find that a lot of the professional people aren't as educated in what we're doing as we think they should be, but they're not dealing in a day by day as we do. So as I say, it's it's a profession I love doing, and it challenges me every day. There's no doubt, but it's definitely becoming more requirements to stay in tune with the technology, the bits and pieces that are happening. Just even on the advertising, it's just at Sydney Morning Herald in the old days.
Exactly. Where is that Herald now? There's no more classifieds, is there?
One of the major subjects that's been requested for the conference once again is marketing, websites. How are we going to do it? Are we going to go social media? Are we going to go through websites? Are we going to, how do you get out there? How do you get the message?
Yeah. And just to comment on that, I think up until recently, how we used to sell or get buyers was you post an ad on the internet and wait for the buyer to contact you. Now, that's the old way. The new way is you've got to go out and approach buyers. If you're selling a business that is involved in engineering in the rail industry, you've got to go out and and contact people who are in that centre and get them to have a look at it.
Isn't that interesting, though? Isn't that interesting that despite all this digital technology, despite the fact that we can send emails, we can go online and everything like that, what have we done, Bruce? We're coming back to a
personal
conversation.
Yeah.
We're coming back to pick up the phone and hunting. And
No replacement.
And most importantly, we've got to build relationships. And I think
it's networking in a different fashion.
It is, isn't it?
Exactly.
And that's the value. One of the key values I see, and not being a business broker myself, but a business owner, is that a business broker brings the value of networking, of connections, of people that they can talk to. You can trust the business broker.
That's right.
Because of all the knowledge and expertise that they've built up over the years.
Yes. Exactly. One of the things that, sorry about my throat, one of the things that Andrew has is he knows everybody around Australia. Everywhere you go, Andrew knows people, and he's got a great network. It is true. Someone in Western Australia was talking to me, and they knew Andrew from sailing or something. But that is, the network is a great resource, and the ability to network and put people together is really the part of the future. And I was going to say, one of the other things we were talking about, Andrew, in the future, I think, is that there won't be any more amateurs, there won't be any more shonks, there won't be any more dodgies. There's guys who come from that 90s way of doing business where there was no due diligence and no confidentiality who are still around. And I think the association is quickly weeding those guys out.
Look, the associations recognise that it has to. And that's not trying to get rid of members. That's one thing we don't want to do, But where people will not take on the change, that means that they have to make a change. One way or another. And that's really, part of what I've been doing with the ARBB is, as I say, we've rewritten bylaws and constitutions and, mentioned to Bruce earlier, we've got a board meeting today where we're going to put in a whole lot of raft of suggestions again. And most probably, my time, in the role as president will be very much setting it up for the future. And hopefully the person that takes on from there, it'll be a lot easier role, but they will be setting it up for the next person. And it'll go on. And it's the same as this conference will be first time that we've really got a conference that's going to be dedicated to training. It's the first time, from what I'm being told, that education and training will actually be setting the criteria of what will be happening at the conference. And we've also been which fell into my agenda as well, was looking after the partners. The partners that we actually have at the conference are people that we work with on a day by day, not just someone that wants to front money at it, and so on. So, it's about building up all that network, to build up a strong association for the future, and we've opened up communication even in Queensland with the REIQ, and working with them in the future in delivering CPD training and stuff like that. It's only initial days, but
there's been strong progress there.
Absolutely.
Since November last year, I think we're really moving forward there.
Yep.
And not just in New South Wales, in Queensland, I think in other states that's going to be the case too. You mentioned before, I just want to go back to it because we skimmed across it, about share sales becoming a more prominent, more prevalent way of doing business. That's one of the big things in the future. It's not just the share sale transaction becoming more common or relevant or necessary, but it's the way we transact with earn-outs and vendor finance or retention clauses or payment for the acquisition of the business by shares in the acquiring company. The broker's role is not just to put all the parties together, but to find the best way to transact.
Yep.
To get the best deal for the seller, but also a great deal for the buyer, where it's not just a case of here's the money, see you later, which we used to do in the 90s, but more about, okay, what's your agenda for the buyer? What's the seller's agenda? How can we make this work and transition that ownership for premium value for everybody?
And it's been a really interesting transition for myself, understanding all that side, and I'll talk very briefly on one that we actually have a contract at the moment. It's a share sale, large company. The offer or the buyer was a large Australian company, investment company. They made an offer of 6 million. We know that the vendor wanted a lot more, and we had to sit there and say, guys, just work with us. That's just the offer. And being a share sale, there are so many aspects: retained earnings, staff, entitlements, capital gains. And by the time we were finished, from 6 million, it went to their payout will be about 9.3. And that's the part, that's the knowledge that you pick up along the way. And the point of being able to involve the accountants and direct the accountants into the area that they could then go back to their, I'm going to say employer, to guide them. And in the middle of all this, you've got to take the emotion out of it, so that you can do your job. And so it's quite interesting,
Yes, you mentioned emotion. We shouldn't, this is business. It shouldn't be emotional. It shouldn't be personal. It's business.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the skills of a good business broker is to keep it that way. Not to be petty and talk about people's personal situations or whatever, just keep it about business. But it's just something else you said there. We're thinking about the future of a business broker is really about the ability to construct a deal and put it together. So whether it be share sale or an asset sale, whether it be retention, earn out, how we construct it is, a broker needs to be able to understand the at least superficially, the issues that could prevail with capital gains tax or stamp duty or employee entitlements, but all those other things that come into play. And what we're finding, Andrew, is, and you mentioned it before, I don't know if you're aware of it, that sometimes the advisors aren't actually across it. And sometimes as a broker, we need to bring to the table for the seller an advisor who's across those sorts of things, who can help them. And it might even be, you mentioned before, that company structure situation. It might be before we even go to the market, the accountant that manages that client is not competent or able to put it into get it ready. So we need to bring somebody in who's a specialist in that area.
And it was interesting. I had an inquiry or a lead that was passed on by one of our brokers in New South Wales, and it was for a franchise. And I spoke to the guy and, got the sad story about, one shop he'd had to close and he had another shop and that was successful. And, and he was going through a divorce and family had moved to Sydney and et cetera, et cetera. And then I found out that he'd worn a couple of $100,000 in debt from closing the other store, and that was pulling his other store down. So, with a little bit of experience and knowledge, and it helps because of the ARBB, we have a sponsor, De Jong Reed. So I was able to ring Hank De Jong. I said, Hank, can you talk to this guy? No charge, first call. So Hank's gone and spoken to him. They're now putting a plan together because there's actually an initiative that was brought in last year by the government. I'm trying to think of what it's actually called. It's a small business restructure, I think it is, SBR. Whereas you can go and apply for it, and the actual director of the company can still run his own company without having an insolvency company come in and take over to get the best result.
Wow.
And so we've gone and put this guy into that thing. Hank will run it. It'll help to reduce they'll reduce his debt. They'll restructure the whole lot. He'll end up with a requirement. I'll end up with a business I can sell. And, it's happy days for all.
Yeah.
And the guy gets to move to Sydney.
But a good broker has the contact with John Reed, has the ability to understand that there's that option for the seller. In the old days, that wasn't an option.
Yep.
In the old days, sorry, mate, you can't sell it. You've got to walk away or bankrupt or whatever. So that's an example of how brokers don't just bring buyers to the table. They add a lot more to the sale.
And by the way, that was, once again, comes through the education, because I went to a De Jong Reed seminar 3 days before this, and that's where this, I'm pretty sure it's the SBR, Small Business Restructure. And I had no idea at that stage that, I'm used to one of the large insolvency companies coming in for a couple of $100,000. They take their cut. That's the end of the business. Everyone's a loser. Banks, tax, everyone. Versus allowing the actual directors to remain in place. And that was the first I'd heard of it. But as I say, that's, all those initiatives are sitting there for us, but you've just got to stay in tune with it all. And that comes back to the point, where a business broker is going in the future, they have to be across the door. And the only way they're ever going to do it is the education. We do a lot of education at Benchmark. I'm lucky because I get a fair bit of time with Bruce. So, we get to talk about these other programs, but I also get the introduction to what happens through the AIBB. And I think, you have to be across all that.
That's the future.
And I think
as we get older, we forget it.
But I think it's also important what you mentioned, that the AIBB is actually standing up more. And if I can put it this way, cleaning up the industry, putting in more rules and regulations. And, we've seen this across other industries where change had to be forced into the industry by the industry body. And the reality is that some people had to leave a particular industry.
Right.
And you know what?
That's right.
All for the better, because all of a sudden,
Financial planning, all sorts
exactly
of
right.
medical.
Yep.
Right.
And so it cleans it up, and we become a true profession, and people see us as professionals.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where it should be.
Yeah. And I think Andrew's too modest to say this, but the AIBB has, for many years, continually raised the standard. And now that he's as president, I think he's looking to raise the standard continually, which is exactly what we need. And that is a sign of a true profession. If you're prepared to say, I know we're happy where we are, that's not professional. A profession that's continually looking to
You've got to keep on improving.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and as Bruce touched on very quick, I'm a sailor. Every time you're out on the water, you're constantly readjusting to try and get more speed.
Yeah.
It's, that's the methodology that I'm used to working with. And that's how I ran my own company.
That's a great analogy for business, right? You can't just set your sail and head in one direction, and you've got to keep continually adjusting the sail, the tiller.
Wind blows, brake comes in.
It's most very why there's so many businessmen that sail.
Yeah, good businessmen. That's right. We've got to be prepared to adjust, and I think that is part of the future of business broke. We don't know what's going to come around the corner next. We don't know how things could change. Uber has affected taxis. Airbnb affected accommodation and hospitality. We don't know how the business sales market is going to change in the future, but I know one thing: if we don't continually develop and evolve, we will be irrelevant.
Yep.
But I'm really proud of the fact that as a business broker, we've gone from being salesmen who just meet somebody and try and shove them into a business to really adding value and adding so much to the transaction. And I think that's the future, and that's why it's exciting.
I agree. I think technology is going to underpin this, and it's going to assist us. So we're going to have all sorts of digital tools and things like that. Putting that aside, it goes back to this sort of conversation. It comes back to the knowledge and the human relationships.
Yeah.
It's going to be critical.
And touching on that, I go back to the, whenever we've had the AIBB conferences, and also, Bruce runs a review day with the brokers, you actually get more out of that networking at the bar in telling stories and finding out. One of the segments we're going to do at the upcoming conference is telling war stories and so on, so that people will hear, and we'll actually have opportunities where people can actually give scenarios on how they would have handled that war story and so on. As well as at the end of it, it'll be, this is how it was done.
Yep.
And so on.
That's how we learn. That's how we learn, by sharing those stories and improving the future.
The mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're trying to sort of, capitalise that opportunity, with the brokers this year.
Yeah.
So,
So, to sum up, what's the relevance of this to our audience? Well, if you're a buyer, hopefully we've illustrated the value of a business broker in the process. And if you're a business owner, I'm sure we've certainly pointed out why you would use a business broker and why we should. A good business broker can help out with not just preparing the business for sale and managing the sale, but bringing people to the table that can help add value and make the process.
In fact, I'll just add something there. If you're a business owner right now and not even thinking about selling, I still believe you should be contacting a business broker and having a conversation and getting that advice.
Exactly right.
What does the market look like? And because at some point in time, everybody exits a business, and there's different ways. Today is the day that you're going to start preparing for exit.
Yes.
Have a conversation with
them.
But we're getting more 50-year-olds looking at getting out of their businesses so that they do risk.
Yep.
Yes.
That's right.
So having a chat to a business broker now and understanding what the business is worth today, what they can do to improve the value and make it more saleable, is going to add
absolutely value. It's a good risk mitigation.
Exactly right. Why wouldn't you? All right. Well, thanks, Andrew, for joining us today. It's been great to have a chat to you.
Yep. I'm going to say, Bruce, the weather's most probably just right for you to go park your ark.
Well, it's a miserable day on the Gold Coast today. So thanks for making the journey to join us today, Andrew.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Great to have you.